A Manhattan jury will soon decide if Donald Trump is guilty or not guilty in his hush money trial, and the stakes are incredibly high. Donald Trump is the only former president in the US ever to be indicted, and this New York case will render the first verdict and may be the only case of his that gets to trial before the election. Trump is facing 34 felony counts in this case over allegations that he falsified business records to conceal a $130,000 hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. A verdict is expected shortly after Memorial Day, with closing arguments scheduled for May 28. But what happens if Trump is convicted? Will he be sent to jail? Can he appeal? Can he even vote for himself in the November election? We're going to answer all of your questions. Donald Trump can run for president even if he's convicted. A felony conviction does not legally prevent someone from running for president even if they were jailed. The Constitution says that all natural-born citizens who are at least 35 years old and have been a resident of the US for 14 years can run for president. Being a felon isn't a disqualifier. History also tells us that candidates with criminal convictions have run for president in the past, albeit unsuccessfully. About 100 years ago, Eugene Debs ran for president while in federal prison as the nominee of the Socialist Party, and he got close to 1 million votes without ever hitting the campaign trail. Another convicted presidential candidate, Lyndon LaRouche, ran for president in every election between 1976 and 2004, including one campaign from prison, but he only got over 26,000 votes. It's possible, but it's not a certainty. The judge in this case, Justice Juan Merchan, has final discretion in sentencing, and given factors like Trump's age, he's about to turn 78, and his lack of prior convictions, he might avoid jail time. In fact, most first-time offenders in nonviolent cases are often sentenced to probation and fines. That being said, it is possible the judge decides to incarcerate Trump if he's convicted. And if he does, it's expected the sentence would be anywhere from 1 to 4 years, either at New York City's Rikers Island or in one of the New York's 44 state prisons. And unlike his other criminal cases, if Trump is convicted in this trial and elected president again, he would not be able to try to pardon himself. And that's because falsifying business records is a state crime, and only the New York governor could pardon him. If Trump is convicted, he will almost certainly appeal the verdict, and that process could take months to play out. It would likely begin in the appellate division in Manhattan and could eventually reach the Court of Appeals in Albany. It's hard to say how long that would take, but given the complexity and the significance of the case, it's possible that the appeals process wraps up after Election Day. We know that Trump can still run for president with a felony conviction, but can he vote for himself as a convicted felon? Well, it depends. For Trump to lose his voting rights, he would need to actually be in jail at the time of the November election. And like I said earlier, it is possible that the judge hands him a jail sentence, but if his appeal takes longer than 6 months, then he'll be able to vote. Now, the Constitution does not address whether convicted felons have the right to vote, but several states impose limitations on their voting privileges. So in Florida, where Trump lives and has voted since 2020, a felon's eligibility to vote depends on the laws of the state where the conviction occurred, which in this case is New York, which only revokes a felon's voting rights while they are incarcerated. So if Trump is convicted and receives a probationary sentence, he would maintain his eligibility to vote. The only way he wouldn't is if he were in jail at the time of the election. Well, first, let me give some background. Trump is facing 40 felony counts in Florida for allegedly hoarding classified documents and obstructing the government's efforts to retrieve them. 4 counts in Washington related to his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and 13 felony counts in Georgia in connection to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election result in that state. While a conviction in the hush money trial wouldn't directly impact Trump's other cases, it could significantly influence his legal strategy and public perception. A guilty verdict could embolden prosecutors. It could affect jury perceptions and potentially impact whether he's willing to negotiate a plea deal or settlement agreement, or if he's, willing to take the stand in those trials. It might also undermine Trump's credibility in future trials, and it's possible the judges may take the conviction into consideration when determining sentencing. Ultimately, though, we don't know what impact the conviction would have. but it is possible that it influences his legal defense in those cases and shapes the public's perception of his legal troubles.